Hello, folks.
Good afternoon, Mr. Richards.
Hello.
How's all your health? Everybody okay? How about you, Pepin? Have things leveled out for you?
Yes, sir. I'm about 90% recovered. My wife is all fine. My kids are fine. So I'm back in the saddle. Thank God. Thank you.
Good.
Yep.
Well, hell, 90% of you is enough, right, Pepin?
That's right. I'm still working on the 10%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everybody, not just everybody hear me. Pepin, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. I think I can hear you.
All right. Kim, do we have all the board members online?
We have a quorum. We don't have Jesse Dudley, but we do have a quorum.
Okay, let me just close my door and we can get started here.
Hey,
Hey, good
Kim,
afternoon. What's that?
this is Greg McDonough. I was just indicating to Kim that Ed Horahan's having an issue signing on to the Zoom.
I don't have him in the waiting room yet.
I guess while Kim is doing that, whenever you're ready, Mr. Interim Chair.
Okay, all right, let's get, I know everybody's schedule is pretty busy. I want to, first of all, welcome everybody to our meeting this afternoon. We have several new board members today, starting their first meeting. So I think the first order of business is to formally introduce Dr. Morris from the school district, Mr. Perrin and Ms. Jones from the city. So I think what I'd like to be able to do is just, should I put this up here, is maybe just start with a brief set of introductions, and then we will go from there. So I'll start, and then I'll kind of call on people on my screen here as we work our way around the room. So, and for our new board members, we'll kind of conclude with you. That works for everybody. So I'll go ahead. My name is Mike Schmidt. I'm the Chief Operating Officer with the Rochester City School District. Oversee a whole variety of operational responsibilities, everywhere from transportation, certainly, to facilities. And I've been with the district now for just about 10 years. And I've been a board member now, I believe, for a little more than a couple hours anyway. I think it's about 5 years now, as I plus or minus as I recalculate. So let me turn it over to Tom Richards.
Yes, I'm Tom Richards. I'm now the joint appointment to the board. I was a superintendent's appointment for quite a while. I've been on the board for, I didn't know you were going to ask me this question, Mike, but certainly for a little longer than Mike anyway, long enough to be getting a little long in the tooth there. And I'm pleased to get going again. We've got another phase ahead of us and I look forward to it.
Terrific. Carlene, may I call on you next?
Sure. I'm Carlene Pierce, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer for RCSD. I have been in school business administration for 20 years, and I have actually, prior to that, I was with JP Morgan Chase for 15 years. I have been on this particular board for less than a year. And I don't know how I've done it because I'm still only 27, but I look forward to working with everyone.
Okay, Kim, is Jesse joined us yet or no?
I do not show Jesse as joining us yet.
Okay. Dr. Morris, I'm going to call on you next. Are you on?
I had just left a meeting with she and Leslie, so they
Okay.
might be just.
All right, so let me go yes to Ms. Jones.
Okay, I'm Kim Jones. I am the Director of Finance for the City of Rochester. I've got a plethora of experience in municipal finance as well as corporate finance. I've worked for a bank before. I worked for Eastman Kodak Company, GE Capital. So I come to you with broad experience in finance, and I'm just happy to be here and look forward to embarking on phase 3.
Okay, and Mr. Perrin, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, sir.
You got it spot on. Thank you. I'm Rich Perrin. I am the Department of Environmental Services Commissioner designee at this point. I come from the private sector where I worked for a multidiscipline engineering and design firm, managed projects of all sizes across the country, upwards of $600 million design build. I've got a good background in finance and funding from a transportation side. Prior to that, I spent 17 and a half years in the public sector, 12 of which were as the director of the Genesee Transportation Council, which is the designated metropolitan planning organization for the Rochester, New York metropolitan area. So did a little bit of work with RCSD over the course of that tenure on various things from safe routes to school to looking at various options for non-motorized transportation, and excited about being aboard. So I'll stop there and we can get it going. Thank you.
Terrific. And when Dr. Morris or Jesse log on, then just let me know and I'll have them introduce themselves as well. Before I go any further, I would really be remiss without formally recognizing and thanking Norman Jones, our former chair, and Gina Cruz, our former joint member, for their incredible service to this board and this team. I don't think anybody will. I think our new members will certainly find out here very quickly, but the number of hours that goes into being a board member and the commitment that both of them have shown in their roles and past. And I think Alan and Kim, I'd like to make sure we give a formal thank you to both of those individuals for all their dedication and support. And I will certainly miss Norman's counsel and collaboration. We've become great friends as a result of this organization, and he will be certainly greatly missed. So with that, I want to transition to Ed and Greg, if they can just kind of walk us through, especially for our new board members, with kind of the interim board structure, and kind of just give us a real high level overview of how things will kind of move forward here.
Excuse me, Mike, Dr. Morris has joined.
Oh, excellent. Before Ed and Greg, if you can just hold on for a moment, Dr.
Sure.
Morris.
Sorry, I was late. Just finishing up another meeting, and I'm really excited of working with all of you on this really important project. So thank you so much, and can't wait to work with all.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
And Mike, Jesse Dudley just joined as well.
Hey, Jesse, good afternoon. We just did some real brief introductions. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to Rich, Kim, and Janelle, our new board members. Is he muted?
His
All right.
audio is not connected yet.
Yeah, we'll come back around to that. So, as I said, Ed and Greg, if you can just kind of give us an overview of the interim board structure from your perspective. For those of you, Ed and Greg serve as our general counsel to the joint board. So may I turn it over to you, gentlemen?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Ed Horahan, Bon Chenikin King here with Greg McDonald. We're counsel to the Rochester School Modernization Program. I welcome Dr. Morris, Mr. Perrin, and Ms. Jones. Just to give you a little, given these new appointments to the board, and with Tom moving to the joint position, the joint appointee position, we now have a full board of 7. With 3 new board members, typically an organizational meeting is held in July pursuant to the bylaws of the board. And at that meeting, the board leadership can be reconstituted. At present, given these new appointments, Mike Schmidt, who is formerly the vice chair, is now the interim chair. Ms. Jones, we're going to ask you to be the interim finance person on the board. And I guess I should warn you that that may become a permanent position if you so wish it to be. And those positions would be filled on a temporary basis until such time as the board decides to formalize the board leadership with a chair, a vice chair, and a treasurer, which is required by the bylaws. Greg and I have looked at this. We do not have to await the July meeting to make that change. But given that this is everybody's first meeting, we felt it appropriate to advise the board that once everybody gets their feet wet and understands the structure of the board, responsibilities of the board, then as a whole board, with everybody fairly up to speed, you can make those decisions.
All right.
Any questions thus far? Okay, now and Alan Williams can certainly jump in on this. The next step is for the new board members. There is an orientation that will take place over the next several weeks. That has to do with a complete immersion into the RSMP, not just phase 3, which we're coming upon, but also the prior phases. There are other things that the new board members will need to do to comply with their role, one of them being sexual harassment training, which will be administered through my firm virtually. And again, the orientation will include a full immersion into the objectives and goals of the RSMP, as well as some current things that are going on. For example, currently we are in RFP process for a program manager and an ICO. The ICO is the independent compliance officer. That position monitors our MBE, WBE, and other requirements along those lines. The program manager obviously runs the entire program. So there's a lot of information and acronyms that all of us have had to learn over the years, and that orientation will hopefully cover those matters. But for now, we also have a claim by an electrical contractor in phase 2 involving East High School. That claim is still being discussed in executive session. There was the potential for a vote on approval of a settlement of that claim. We have recommended that that be postponed until the new board members have been brought up to speed, are able to ask questions and fully vet the merits of that particular claim. So that's where things stand right now. I certainly welcome the new board members. Greg and I are available at any time to discuss anything that may concern you. And you can certainly reach out to us through email or our phone numbers, which you should have.
Mike, I'd like to say too, that I sent out material to both Mr. Perrin and Ms. Jones, and I'll do the same thing for Ms. Morris. And don't be alarmed by the amount of information I'm sending to you. You're not required to memorize it all within a week or so, but just for your background, for you to read at your leisure. But that'll be the basis of the material that we use for the orientation, for the onboarding process.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much, Ed, Greg, and Alan. Okay, so without any questions for them, we're going to go to our next item on our agenda, and wanted to give an opportunity for the leaders of our city, Mayor Evans and Superintendent Myers Small, to just provide a quick or provide a welcome to the joint board. And but I would be remiss to not, before we do that, to not introduce our new Board of Education president. President Cynthia Elliott has joined us this afternoon. So President Elliott, first of all, congratulations on the presidency, and welcome to the board meeting this afternoon. Okay, perfect. All right, so Mayor Evans, if you're with us.
I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Mayor.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'll be brief. I just want to say great to see phase 3 coming together. I think that on the city side, we want to be as cooperative and collaborative as possible with the district. I was on the district side when we first launched phase 1. In fact, I was at Nixon Peabody when we signed all the paperwork, kind of setting up the initial phase of the facilities modernization program. So I'm thrilled to see that we're going into phase 3. Our goal is to be as collaborative as possible. I think that you'll see that with the membership that you have, and I hope that the city was collaborative in the last round. I know that we were, and I hope that we will continue to be able to be that way. These are not only just buildings for our students, these are also big economic development projects for our community. They provide a lot of jobs and dollars. And I'm happy to be able to be supportive of this program. And I look forward to a great closeout of phase 2 and a strong phase 3 going down. And obviously from the city side, you have our representatives here, and we will stand willing, ready, and able to assist in any way possible to make sure that this goes very smoothly. So thank you all for your service, and let's have a strong phase 3. And again, I thank you for allowing me to pop in and say a few words on your board meeting. And I'll stop there because I know you got a lot of work that you got to get to.
Thank you so much, Mayor Evans, for your support, and we certainly will take on that spirit of collaboration as we lead the city into phase 3. So thank you for those positive words. Kim, has the superintendent been able to join us?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm here.
Dr. Myers-Small, good afternoon. Welcome.
Hi, Dr. Schmidt. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry. I was having some Zoom issues and link issues, but I'm glad to be here. To just echo Mayor Evans, and that's so cool to say that of one of your former students, Mayor Evans' words. Very excited to collaborate and work together as we move forward into this third phase. It is very exciting for us as a school district to have such significant work that can happen in our schools and around our schools. And so we are very excited. My goal is to be very actively involved. This involves major projects in the district. And so, I'm a very actively involved superintendent, and particularly when it comes to certainly beautifying our spaces. This really has the opportunity to make a significant impact on our schools. And so excited, looking forward to collaborating, and can't wait to see what happens over the weeks, months, and years to come. So I look forward to moving all of the projects forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent, for your support. And I don't think with all the different things going on across our city and across our school district, I don't think anybody has as challenging a job as you have right now. And we thank you so much for all that you do and all that you support for us. And we certainly commit to you as well that our collaboration and working not only with the city and with the school district as a board going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to transition, and our next item on our agenda kind of reflects a little bit of the transition here. So we are, I think, currently closing out our phase 2 projects. We have, and at the last board meeting, we've extended the contracts of Savin, our program manager, Mr. Alan Williams, our chief executive, and Anshin, our compliance office. So once again, I'm messing up that terminology, forgive me. But we extended those contracts through the end of April, and with Allen's until the end of June. But there are currently, and there certainly will be, some other transition items as we close out phase 2, and certainly as importantly, closing out phase 2 successfully, also launching and embarking on phase 3. And one of those items that's kind of in the transition phase certainly is a RFQ/RFP process for the selection of a program manager for phase 3. and for an ICO, an Independence Compliance Officer. Both of those are required by legislation. And what I've asked is Ed and Greg, once again from BSK, to be able to provide the board a status update as to where we are with those two items, because they are a transition from the previous board, but with the far majority of these items being in front of this new board as we move forward. So Ed and Greg, can you come back on screen and kind of walk us through where we are with these?
Sure, absolutely. And Alan, feel
And
free.
Alan as well. My apologies, Alan as well. Excuse me.
Kim, it might be helpful to put the timeline up if you can. Okay. So there has been a committee of the board that has been meeting. Tom, Jesse, and previously Gina Cruz and Alan Williams has been involved, and council has been involved about developing the form RFP and RFQ, largely based on RFPs and RFQs that were issued for prior phases, but they've been updated and modified. Certainly the schedule's been modified. You know, the overreaching goal is to obtain the best program manager and obtain the best independent compliance officer, or ICO, for the project going forward. So the RFQ for both the ICO and the program manager was issued on January 3rd. And so that's underway. Alan, maybe you could take a moment to explain to everybody on this call how that was disseminated, who it was disseminated to, and anything else you might want to add in that regard.
Okay. And what's going on is the RFQ, the whole RFP, it's a two-stage process. The first of which being, we sent out the RFQ asking firms both for the program manager as well as for the ICO to basically tell us why it is that we should select them to go to the next step. The RFQ basically asked firms to give us a list of their qualifications. And then once that happens, there will be a selection process where both for the ICO as well as the program manager, we decide, or the selection committee decides who will go on to the next step or who will be invited to submit an RFP. And right now, in terms of the overall dissemination process for the RFQ, it's gone to the Daily Record, the Dodge Report, Robex, or Rochester Business Exchange, BidNet, Dataflow, the City of Rochester, the RSMP website, and also I'll check and see, but it should be on the City School District's website also. So it's been a fairly extensive process in terms of getting the word out, asking for firms to submit basically letters of qualification that we can then decide who do we invite to submit the RFP.
And Ed, could you just walk through at a high level the timeline that's in front of us?
So yes, we have the issuance of the request for quotation from January 3rd, 2022. And then we have those firms that are interested in submitting on January 17th. There are clarification questions that would be due from those who are interested on January 17th. And those answers would be provided on January 24th. Then there is a pre-submission conference. And that would take place on January 26th. So people would indicate their interest and that their notification they could participate in that conference if they so choose. Then the responses for the RFQ would be received on February 2nd. And now that's when we kind of pivot to some additional work. So I mentioned the committee of the board involving Tom and Jesse and formerly Gina and Alan. And by the way, the incumbents, that would be Sabin and Anshin, our ICO. They do not participate in this process. They will participate presumably is interested in being named program manager and ICO for phase 3, but they do not participate in this process for obvious reasons. The work would then be done at that committee level with the individuals I just mentioned, Tom, Jesse, and Gina's replacement, and likely somebody from outside the organization, from either City Council or the Board of Education. They would vet those proposals and prepare a short list. And the short list ultimately would, and you know, let me just go through the process. So those interested in submitting a proposal, that would happen by March 1st. Much like the RFQ, there would be opportunities for RFP clarification questions by those interested parties. Answers would be provided. And then finally, the receipt of the RFP responses would be on March 14th. Following that, there would be interviews with those shortlisted firms. So for example, there's 3 ICO candidates or 3 or 4 program manager candidates. They would be interviewed by the committee I just discussed. One thing that has to happen is that in order for a contract to be awarded, you know, after we go through the RFQ, RFP interview process, we come down to a final candidate that the RSNP board is looking to recommend. It has to be approved by the mayor. It has to be approved by the superintendent, has to be approved by the school board, and has to be approved by City Council. And that would be the final step in the contract would be awarded. It says it's anticipated April 4th, but as Mike pointed out earlier today when we were having these discussions, these awards, these contract awards are agenda items that need to make it onto the school board agenda and onto the City Council agenda. You know, depending on the lead time for that, we figured it's more likely to be later in April. So that's the process for the selection of the ICO and the program manager for phase 3. Greg and I are happy to answer any questions.
So
All right.
one reason why I wanted to make sure this, one reason why I wanted to make sure as the interim chair that this made it on the agenda today for our new board members is for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's important for all of us to know the process, and for our new board members, we'll go through this in more detail and certainly answer questions as necessary. The second piece of it, and I want to make sure this chart is updated to reflect not only the anticipated award date of being more likely April 30th as opposed to April 4th, so that we end up with placeholder resolutions at the April Board of Education meeting and the April City Council meeting, so that when we reach that process point, that our Board of Education and our and the City Council would have something in place in order to approve this, assuming that the other approvals kind of fall in line as in order. And then the third piece of it is to make sure that we, you know, make the collaboration with our Board of Education and with its City Council for a member to be selected to be on this committee. The second point, and I touched base with Dr. Morris a little earlier today, that and asked Dr. Morris to serve as the district's representative on the committee, along with Tom Richards as a joint member and Jesse Dudley as the city's member. So those would be our baseline people from our board through the vetting process, with an addition of the Board of Education member as well as the City Council member. And the other reason why I wanted this to be brought forward tonight and kind of articulated in public session is because this was tabled from our primary meeting in December. We had a couple of scheduling conflicts with vacations and other items. So we had to reschedule our December meeting until the end of December. And we had a pretty abbreviated agenda over December break to work through. One of the primary concerns I had as a board member is that, and I want to make sure as I ask this question kind of on behalf of all of us, is that the decision on the selection of the program manager as well as the ICO will be completely based upon this board, the current school board, and current City Council members. That the previous board will not have, nor the previous Board of Education, nor the previous City Council will not have any influence nor any say in the selection of these, even though the RFQ went out prior to this, I want to be very clear that make sure that's on public record, that the current joint board, the current Board of Education, obviously our new mayor, our current superintendent, excuse me, and City Council, only those members will be in the, have a role in the selection of the ICO and the program manager. Can you be definitive in that, please?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yes.
That was one of the concerns that I had. I wanted to make sure that the previous board would not be the ones that would have any role in selecting. So with an RFQ going out prior to this board kind of being put in place, that was one of the primary concerns that I had. So I want to make sure that's on there publicly. And that's, Kim, I want to make sure that's also captured in the minutes. I think it's important to make sure that everybody has a very clear understanding about what our roles are and so forth. And I also would like this chart updated to reflect a couple of those items that we have added so that when we can place that in the public record as well.
Mike, and since Tom Richards is the only board member here who has been through the process of both phases 1 and 2, maybe Tom, you could lend us some of your experience. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
But you did.
No, yeah, but you did, right. But you did. Actually, that's exactly what you meant.
You really did.
But
You know,
that's
as
okay.
the interim chair, that's the last time that's going to happen. I'll tell you.
Yeah,
right.
right.
As long as I'm in tenure of this thing.
Well, I've been here too long, I guess. One thing I did want to suggest here that would help, I think is helpful for the new members. And that's the context in which this particular decision has to get made. One of the difficulties in starting up each phase is there's a chicken and egg problem with this particular project. Its funding is based on the bonding. And the bonding are really the source of the funding for not only it's the local share as well as the rest of it. And you can't get the bonding underway until you've done a certain amount of planning and gotten approval, both with the district and then by the controller and by the Department of Education. So you have a lot of work to do, actually, quite a bit of work to do, along with the financial consultants that we'll hire with respect to the bonding before you actually have any money. And one of the things we'll have to work out here is how we fund that in the interim. But it shows you why it's important to get this going. If we don't get this going, we don't get the planning going, we don't get the bonding done, and nothing really gets done. And we certainly wouldn't be able to start the serious design and construction work necessary to get the project going. So we do have an imperative here with respect to it, that it's important. The other thing is that I think while there is a necessity, I think, to have a committee here in order to drive this thing and keep it going, I think we should, and we have in the past, had an open process. And by that, I mean, since in the end, the board is going to be asked to act on this, to the extent that those people who are not for one reason or another a member of the committee want to participate in it, I think they should be welcome to do so. It's also very important that we get people from the city and the district, as Mike has suggested, to participate along the way, because we're never going to get this done in this time frame if we start over again every time we go to another level of approval. You know, we're going to have some collaboration as we go along the way to make sure that people are comfortable as we go along and can stick to a pretty good schedule. Because until this is done, the project doesn't start. And there are a lot of lead times with respect to the work that has to be done, not the least of which is the funding that I talked about. So, but you know, we've got a plan. I think people shouldn't be concerned about the fact that you haven't had a chance to review the particular RFP documents. They don't bind anybody. They don't cause a decision to be made one way or the other. By the time we get to the point of making the decision, you'll have time to get yourself up to speed and be comfortable with what we expect of these people. But we do need to get going. We do need to get going.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate you reinforcing that. I think the getting a foundational committee in place, but certainly having it available to any board member who would like to participate, I think is very beneficial. So I appreciate you reinforcing that. I'm going to go, President Elliott, you had your hand up a little bit earlier. I want to call on you and then I'll go to Rich.
Yeah, just a couple of questions about what we've just discussed. One is that just to ask you about your statement, someone's statement regarding that the decision really is with the F&P board, but there, you also mentioned about there needing to be approval from the Board of Education and also City Council. So what is the board asking the approval of from the Board of Education and from City Council? Or did I misunderstand what you said?
So if I'm, and maybe Ed, maybe you can take that.
Sure. So ultimately, there's going to be a recommendation. As Tom Richards says, it should come as no surprise by the time it gets to the Board of Education and to City Council, because they will have constituents participating in the process. But, it says April 4th, but somewhere in the neighborhood before April 30th, the recommended appointment will come before the full Board of Education, and it will also, around the same time frame, come before City Council for approval of an award of a contract to the independent compliance officer and to the program manager.
But if we don't approve that, Ed, does that mean that the FMP board cannot go forward?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay.
So I will work with Calia to at least get a placeholder resolution at the April meeting, and then also work with representatives from the city to make sure that we have one with City Council. There's probably some mental gymnastics to which group has to go first, so we'll work through that. We'll at least begin with the end in mind, so we're ready for that, and then work our way from there. So I'll take that at least as an action item to kind of get those two pieces coordinated with the anticipation that the other steps in the process will kind of come together.
And my last question.
Sure.
My last question has to do with the criteria for the RFP and the RFQ for the program manager and the ICO. Has that changed since the last time the RFP was issued?
And maybe I could answer that, since I was on the committee that was helping to put it together. Not substantially, in the sense that the significant amount of work went into figuring out the characteristics and the responsibilities, particularly when phase 2 was done, because we had learned a lot from phase 1, frankly. So that the criteria have not changed significant. It's been updated. There have been some other changes, but essentially the role remains the same, and therefore the characteristics of the people we're looking for remains the same.
Thank you.
Commissioner Elliott, if you like, I could send you a copy of the both the RFQ and the RFP.
Yes, thank you, Alan. I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Alan, may I make a request as well? Since we're going to share that with with President Elliott, I think we should share that with members of City Council as well as members of the entire board.
Okay.
So if we could do that, both of those steps, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. Rich, you're next.
Great, thank you. This
I'm
was just
sorry, do
sort of-
you promote Richard or Rich? What would be?
Rich, please.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go with Rich. Thank you. No, I was just looking at this timeline, and I guess the question I had is: when somebody submits a question, clarification question, do they receive a response prior to when it's provided to all other parties? And let me just be clear why I'm asking. Is I'm looking at it and saying, particularly when it gets to the RFP, at this point, we've shortlisted, we've said, these are the folks we want to do a full proposal. We're giving them a response on March 8th, and they're having less than a week to basically address that. If that's a significant question, is that enough time for somebody to do it, not knowing what these things looked like last time? I mean, I see a lot of 2-week time periods in here for the various phases, but I guess I just start to have a question depending on how large of proposals are being submitted. And if somebody has a key question, do we answer their question first and say, okay, this is our initial response. The clarification answers will be provided on March 8th. Because to me, having been on the side of doing this, 6 days is a big turnaround, especially if you have a significant question about something related to a design or a materials element.
You know, one of the things, Rich, that the answer to that is we should provide it to, you know, we answer every question when it comes in and provide it to everybody at that point in time. It could change. You're right. There could be something that is so significant that this is going to get messed up a little bit in terms of timing. But generally speaking, for these particular roles, you don't get as many questions because there are no technical, you know, there's no design issue. There are no requirements with respect to the physical work that's being done. And so when people prepare a bid with respect to this, they're doing pricing against a sort of a general requirement. And the design of the projects comes later. So we have found, at least, we'll see what happens here, that we don't get the kind of questions that you get with respect to a regular bid.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate the clarity. Any other questions for Alan or for Ed on this topic? Okay. Okay, so I appreciate.
You know, Rich, one thing that I shouldn't make sure I say here is this is an ambitious schedule. You're right about that.
Yeah.
And it's ambitious because if we don't get this done, we don't get started on the planning and we don't get started on the funding. And that will hurt us if we don't do that.
Nope, I would agree. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, please finish thought. I'm sorry.
No, my thought was only, and I'm fine with that. I do have, like I said, having been on this side, it is ambitious, but at the same time, this is a good test to see if whoever we're going to hire can produce quality work under a short time frame. Obviously, we don't want somebody who's just sitting around with a lot of time on their hands, but that's going to come through with their quals and they won't get there to begin with. So, all right, thank you.
I think so.
In our preparation meeting today, the other thing that I asked as part of the orientation and then from Alan, a brief overview at our February meeting about what the steps are in terms of getting from after the selection of the program manager and the ICO, how we get to from A to B in terms of, you know, what needs to be submitted and so forth to the state and what needs to, you know, before we can actually put a shovel in the ground. Thought it was a little bit ambitious to go through all that tonight, but I think we can kind of tie that together with some of the onboarding as well as a presentation in February. So everybody has an understanding about the financial plan and master plan and so forth that all have to be done. So I think that order of operations would be important. So we stay on track and incredibly ambitious. I know we have a little bit of gap here in terms of the construction season and we're trying to capture as much as we can. So I appreciate the follow-up and the questions. Okay, moving
Mike,
along. Yes.
Mike, one thing that we might mention now is that part of the preparation for the approval of the funding has to do with some very technical work that is done by financial advisors with respect to the bonding and the mechanisms that are necessary to get the controller to approve it, for instance. We're going to have to hire some people to do that. There are people who have done it in the past. They're likely to be the right people to continue to use. It's not a huge contract, but it's a very important one.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe we don't have to do it today, clearly, but we're going to have to we can't wait on that either. That's sort of a simultaneous process. And so for the next meeting, at least, we'll need to come up with a proposal about how we deal with that as well.
I very much agree. I think once we get everybody kind of up on the level set in terms of at least a baseline of understanding, and then we'll have some of these up before us. But I totally agree, Tom. We don't have meetings to kind of to miss here, so to speak, to get all these items kind of organized and on the table from our past experience. Okay, with that, we're going to move into some of we have a very small action item agenda. So my first item is the approval of the minutes from our December meeting. Kim, I'm going to need a motion for that, correct?
I'll move its approval.
And second?
I'll second it.
All right, we got Tom, and I believe we have Jesse as our second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
we are asking for discussion, correct?
You know, you're absolutely right. Thank you for, we
It's
can't
just a
approve
minor
without discussion.
point.
No, you're right. I'm sorry. I got a little bit ahead of myself. Yeah, so before we approve it, items for discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one change, please, and that's underneath the resolution 2020-21-88, and that's where it was adopted 5-0 with stipulations from member Carleen Pierce. I didn't make any stipulations. I had requested a revision to the resolution, and it was later sent out by the attorneys and by Alan. So that was received, but again, it would be with revisions versus stipulations. That was the only change I had on that.
Yeah, good point. That's a very key word to make sure we adjust. Kim, we can make that adjustment? All right, so with that adjustment, is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, we have one action item for this month. It's our pay requisitions. Alan, could you review those for our board, please?
Okay, it's the monthly billing statement. And is Chris?
Yes, I'm available.
Okay.
We'll start with the budget report first, and Chris will walk the board through that, then we'll.
Pepin and Chris, briefly, could you just introduce yourselves to our new board members? We didn't, I figured we would do that as people kind of come online here.
Oh,
Certainly.
sure.
Go ahead, Pepin.
Yes, Pepin Asilian. I am the program director for phase 2 of the RSMP. I was the deputy director in phase 1, working as a sub-consultant to Gilbane, and 7 engineers became the prime consultant and program manager for phase 2. I've been assisted by Rolly Coleman, obviously, as the senior leadership, as the director, and Kim Mitchell, obviously, as the heart of the organization. And Chris from Gilbane has been assisting us with the financial aspects of the program, and others from Savin. Chris?
Thank you,
Chris, the
Pepin.
floor is yours.
Thank you, Mike. I've been with Gilbane for 3 years, and I've joined in the phase 2 aspect of the program. I've been tracking finance and accounting since then. Typically, I report our expenditures for that month and our pay requisition to the banks. And so all change for this month, expenditures, hard and soft costs for the first group of projects. Again, I should interrupt myself. There are several groups of projects that we report on in each phase. Within phase 2, there are sub-phases as the buildings get underway. So in phase 2A, we've spent thus far $164,874,518.39. In phase 2B, we've spent $139,520,452.04. In phase, excuse me, hard and soft costs for the third group of projects, $114,048,164.42. In phase 2D, we've spent $24,519,380.83. In all phases and total to date, we've spent $443,962.515.68.
Of the 442.9 million Chris just mentioned, a portion of that, a $435 million legislative borrowing limit, and $16,378,957 of supplemental funds comprising of the Smart Schools Bond Act, community grants, NYSERDA rebates, and RG&E utility rebates. The breakdown of those external sources of funds is available if the board wishes to see that breakdown in the future. As of this month, the trustee account with US Bank that was holding the $435 million borrowed funds has an ending balance of $1,050 to pay the trustee for one last disseminating agent services until the school district takes that over. The Chase cash capital account that was holding the $16,378,957 of supplemental funds has a balance of $8,435,153.39 in that account. Some of those funds were used for additional projects listed in a fund balance summary that details the overall contingency funds from savings on the borrowed amounts, restitution funds from the AG and E&O settlements. The balance is reserved for additional site development projects currently in planning for schools 4 and 54, the contract extensions that were approved at last month's meeting, and obviously a reserve for the settlement of the HYE claim and lawsuit that BSK Ed Urian mentioned earlier. So we also have some payments to the city for demolition of the residential properties that were acquired by the RJSCB on behalf of the school district. And we also kept a modest reserve for any unforeseen events that could creep up on us between now and the end of the phase 2 program. So if any other details are needed, the board chair wanted us to keep this thing tight. We can certainly provide those details as requested. Thank you. That's the end of our budget report.
Yeah, Pepin, one thing you might mention for the new board members is that the numbers that were read off and the chart that was being referred to that gave the total, those include some retainage and some other projected costs. So it's an attempt to project not only the money we've actually spent, but the money we've committed in some fashion or may have to commit.
Yes, thank you for adding this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think for the benefit of our new members, I think, Alan, when we go through this, a much more thorough review of our, our current finances as it aligns to those two, the documents that Chris had shared would be, I think, would be important as we close out phase 2, and certainly would be aligned as we embark on phase 3.
Okay. Yes.
I'd appreciate that. Okay. Any questions for Pepin or for Chris from the board?
Mike, I'm just going to ask a quick question. Maybe this will
Sure.
come up during the orientation. But there were these other sources of funds that were mentioned that came out. How were those decided upon? Is there a standing split or share that each one of these partners is providing in addition to our primary source of funding? I'm not asking for all the detail. I'm just sort of a natural question. I know maybe 16 million might not seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's still 16 million. So sooner or later we start talking about real money, right?
Yeah, I could probably take that at a high level, and then I'll certainly defer to them. And I think it would be a very good orientation. They were project specific, and based on some other criteria that kind of go into play. And you're absolutely right. 16 million is nothing to scoff at. So not only a smart bond, but also the community schools component of it as well. And I believe the community schools was Monroe and East High School, Pepin, if I'm correct. And
you are correct, Mike. James Monroe was about 401,000, and there were some others. We can certainly provide the details. Yes, and
okay.
Correct.
That separate breakdown would be helpful. And then the smart bond was schools 2, 4 and 10. Am I correct on that?
We started at school 16.
I'm sorry, 4, 10, and 16.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be helpful, I think, for all the members to kind of, because that we may end up with some supplemental funds as part of phase 3 as well. You never quite know where it's going to come from. So that's a great question, Rich. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you for that answer, that it's project specific. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Yep. You got it.
Okay, we have then another piece of this item. The monthly billing summary.
Yeah,
Is there,
we have pay requisition number 20 for December from the trustee account totaling $950. And pay requisition 20A from the cash capital account totaling $380,908.22.
okay,
Oh,
Are there
this
any-
is where, I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you want to ask for that motion or you want the acting treasurer of the board. Motion, Ms. Kim Jones.
we should follow the protocol. I can certainly do it for this evening, but if the acting treasurer would like to do that, I apologize for getting into your lane on my first night as acting chair.
All yours, Mike.
Okay, I'll handle the helm this evening, but I certainly will hand it off very quickly after this is done.
Of course.
All right, so with that, can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All right, we have Tom and Jesse. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right, we now transition to the non-action discussion items of our agenda. I want to first have Alan, can you briefly go over the change orders that were authorized by our previous chair? Alan, I think you're muted.
Sorry. The first of which is that the first two are East High School for $3,435 to Holsworth Kamalski. And this is to replace the casework that was damaged from the leaking split units. And the next is related to that for $23,000, and what this was to Danforth, and this is the actual replacement of the unit itself, which had the unit it basically leaked onto the casework below, which calls for the replacement of the casework itself.
Pepin, the split unit work here, is this part of the larger problems we've had with these units, or is there something unique about this particular one?
Yes, definitely part of the larger problem. Those units have exceeded their useful lives, and I believe the district did not have the capacity at the time to replace them. They've asked the RJSCB to help with securing the contractors and funding that work.
Yeah, one of the things that the new members will soon learn is that one of the things we're doing here is retrofitting these older buildings, trying to get them air conditioned and things like that, so they can be more broadly and used not only by the district but by the community. And so it's requiring some technical gymnastics occasionally to get that done. And some of that you'll see reflected in the split unit air conditioning units, which we've had a little trouble with, but hopefully we've got that under control now.
Alan, I probably jumped to these two when the previously approved by the chair component. Can you briefly go over the criteria for where the chair can approve the different items we're going to discuss here? I should have done that at the beginning. My apologies.
Yes, in line with our bylaws, any change order that is $35,000 or more has to be approved by the full board. Anything less than that, it is to the chair's discretion, or the chair can approve it. As a general rule, for these items that are under $35,000 or so, they're for discussion items only, and because the chair approves it. and anything over 35 comes to the full board. What we see here is, given the size of the change orders as well as the number of the change orders, it's reflective of the fact that we are at the end of the project. Once we start up with phase 3 again, they will be, the change orders will be a lot larger, as well as the change orders themselves will be more numerous.
Absolutely. Before we go to the amendments, any other questions on the change orders from the board? President Elliott, I see that your hand is.
Yeah, just some anecdotal information, just to say that, you know, this facilities modernization project is so huge, and it's huge for our students. Over at Monroe, for example, there's a waiting list because of, you know, the new design over there and the renovation. And so just wanted to say how much this project means to our students as well. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, definitely transformational in so many areas. So appreciate the positive words. Okay, we are going to transition then to amendments, and then Alan, if you can then go right to purchase orders and close this out, that'd be great.
Okay. And these amendments, again, are all approved by the chair. And these are basically deduct amendments. And again, it reflects the fact that we are closing out or have closed out a lot of the projects. And these are for basically closing out the projects. And in a lot of cases, the contracts that were signed, in this case by the the architectural firms as well as the construction manager. In the end, they spent less than was allocated in their contract, and so we're recapturing that and closing it out. And this is SWBR, the architect, CPL is an architect, and then BCC was one of the construction managers over at School 54.
Okay, thank you. Any questions in regards to the amendments? Okay, and then the final item would be the purchase orders.
And these go to these POs again. These are for the most part minor, for all intents and purposes, minor change orders. For School 2, it was the energizing and replacing outlets throughout the school. And at also the plumbing investigation, there was a problem in terms of getting hot water on the second floor in School 2. And this was Perillo was the plumbing contractor was tasked to find out what the problem was, and they did. And I think they are actually making a recommendation of how to correct it. At East High School, there was, in this case, replacing drywall that had been damaged because of a faulty rooftop unit. We corrected the rooftop unit and we approved that at the last month's board meeting. And this is the final piece in terms of replacing the drywall in the room itself that had been damaged. Then the last piece here at East was for there were new handsets and licenses throughout the school itself.
Okay, fantastic. Any final questions on these, on the purchase orders?
Yeah, I do have one, Mike, and it's just,
Sure.
where are we getting these vendors from? Do we have pre-approved lists? And I know a lot of this maybe we'll go over later, but again, just a
Yeah, no.
short answer.
Great question. Alan, could you handle that one, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, where are we getting what?
Where
Yeah,
does it-
are our vendors here that we're doing purchase orders with, are they pre-qualified through some type of a process?
Oh, yeah, these are vendors who were on, basically who would, had been approved or who've been working on the projects previously.
Okay, all right.
Rich, just to follow up on that, these are all vendors who have hard bid these contracts subject to General Municipal Law 103. So they've competitively bid, been awarded contracts in that regard.
Okay, thank you both. That's why I was kind of looking for Alan and Ed. I didn't know if we had somebody that we went with, only because if there's things that need to be fixed, sometimes the people that broke them or didn't fix them in the first place, you might want to have somebody else take a look. So I didn't know if maybe we had, I didn't know maybe we had a list of people that we sort of use and say, listen, you know, you're not going to get one of the contracts, but in the event we need to have some type of a review, this is what we're looking at. So thanks.
Yeah, for clarity also, for example, Robert Peterson Corp. Is a new contractor. Again, the selection was consistent with the procurement policy that the board has adopted. If you have a small project, you have a business opportunity program graduate who can come in and take care of an issue, an existing problem the district has, we kind of get them in very quickly with a purchase order that's consistent with the procurement policy the board has. But the rest of them, that is correct. Those are contractors who are under contract with the RJSCB already.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
Perfect. Great question. Thanks for that. Okay, with that, we are going to transition to our ICO, our diversity report, excuse me, from Anshin. Brian Sandvich, can you briefly introduce yourself and then going to go through our report for us tonight?
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael, and welcome everyone to the board. So my name is Brian Sandvich. I'm a principal at Anshin. I've been the ICO for a little over 8 years for part of phase 1 and all of phase 2. And what you have here that I'm going to present tonight is an executive summary of our monthly report. You receive in the packet the entire report, which is a couple hundred pages at our meeting. I go through kind of a high level of everything that took place in the prior month. So, and if you notice, this is talking about the work that was done during the month of November. So when the work is done during the month of November, by the 15th of December, they have to submit their certified payrolls, canceled checks, and who they're dealing with on their subcontractors. We do that verification and analysis, and then ultimately report on that at the next board meeting. So at this board meeting here, I'm reporting on what took place during the month of November as we go through the program. So as of January 4th, we had received over 99% of all the requested documents and submissions for the project for the month of November of 2021 reporting period. Overall on the project for all of phase 2, we're at 96.76% of all data requested since the project has started in January of 2016. We've received, analyzed, and approved them. The statistical breakdown of our work is as follows. The analysis of workforce to date for phase 2, which is on page 16 and 17 in the report, is minority hours worked during the month of November was 717 for a total of 423,422 hours. Non-minority women, we have a total of 145 hours worked, which brings our grand total up to 101,576. Non-minority male, we had 648 hours, which brought us to 1,051,828 hours. The total workforce on the project to date is 1,576,827 hours have been performed on the project. Then we drop down and we analyze the comparison of our goals overall on hours worked, and we break it out into 2 separate categories when we're going through it. So the first one is minority, both male and female. We have a goal of 22%, and we're currently at 26.85%. Women, non-minority only, we have a goal of 8%, and we're at 6.44. When you look at the same data and break it out where we take minority males, and we're using the goal of 22%, we're at 23.24%. And then when we look at the women category, both minority and non-minority, still using the goal of 8, we're at 10.05%. So then you break down and we look at our business participation and utilization. And so far, we have had total contract value that we've analyzed and reported back to us of $394,429,000. So on that, the breakdown is are MBE, contracts and subcontracts. We currently have a goal of 17% for phase 2, and we're currently at 19.07%. Our WBE, we have a goal of 10%, and we're currently at 11.8%. Our SBE, we have a goal of 3%, and we're at 2.52. And our DBE, we have a goal of 3%, and we're at 2.61. Both of those goals on our disadvantage in our small business, we've struggled with those a little bit during phase 2, but the difference between phase 1 and phase 2, at phase 1, an entity, if it was an M or a W, but also either disadvantaged or small, could change their certification during the year as to where they wanted their money applied to. That became an accounting challenge. So during phase 2, you have to declare if you're an M or a W, and you can only get credit in a category for the work that's done. Phase 1 allowed that to be switched every month back and forth. So this is there has been a small struggle there. We were also asked to look at City of Rochester residents that are working on the project. So currently there were 6 residents from the City of Rochester who worked during the month of November, which was 33% of the total of 18 individuals that worked there. And how we verify if someone is a city resident is by taking off the certified payrolls, their addresses that they have on record. And then we also verify that with letters on a random basis. So that's our monthly report. Anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Brian, I just wanted to ask, what's the difference? I mean, typically M and W is a state designation and DBE is a federal designation. So what is the difference between WM and D in this case? Or what's the difference between W and M versus, let's put it that way.
Yep, so let's first start with the M and Ws. So the M and Ws have to be state certified by Empire State Development or that. And so then what we've done is we take those that are state certified with their NAICS code as to the services that they can provide under the NAICS code and verify that information. And then the board created a definition for both the disadvantaged and the small businesses in order to encourage some local additional hiring, subcontracting, and working with them. And
Okay,
so
excellent.
on. And then one of the things that we were able to do, and I can supply if anybody would like, we've taken those databases and taken the NAICS code and all the information, and then we geocoded it so we can see where the businesses come from. And then we also did that, and we do maps, and we've presented these, and I'll circulate to everybody just so you see a sample of them. We also did that with the workforce. It's been a question that has come up. President Elliott's asked for it in the past, and we've provided as to what is the composition of the workforce actually on the sites. Right. So then we can show where the workforce comes from and the race and gender of the amount of the employees that are working on the sites.
All right, excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Brian from our board members? All right.
Thank you.
And, certainly, Brian, thank you for all the very comprehensive monthly reports that you provide. We appreciate it very much. Okay, want to transition now to our program manager, program management report, excuse me. Pepin, on behalf of Savin, provides us a very thorough report on a monthly basis of all the different school projects and kind of a status update. Obviously, with us being right at the end of phase 2, the majority of these projects are completed and closed out, other than some final details. So what I've asked is for our new members, for Alan and the team, to kind of go through an overview of the of certainly on phase 2 of the different projects that we've completed and so forth. At a high level, phase 1, because I do think it's important for those connections to be made between phase 1 and phase 2. And then certainly we'll have an awful lot of time to go through and look at phase 3 as we start with our initial thoughts here that we have, and then kind of get to more of a final stage. So I believe we want to focus on one project in particular tonight, Pepin, and that's closing out of the final stages of School 54. So I'm going to turn it over to you and your team.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Phase 2 closeout, as you mentioned, is still in process with several warranty and post-warranty items being addressed effectively at schools 2, East, and 16, although completed a number of years ago. We got some people addressing some flooring issues there. Meeting, we will definitely focus on the site development work being planned for school 54. In that regard, I will ask Kim Mitchell to bring up the school 54 file, which has the renderings and the animation of those renderings. And Roland Coleman will present this. He's done a whole lot of work with Labella on this. And this was a request I believe the board had a couple of months ago, and we were able to work on it this month. Kim, if you could bring up this that file Rolly worked on. Thank you. And as Kim is doing this, phase 1 is fully completed and closed out. Several of the final cost reports were submitted by the school district to the state education department. Phase 2, fully completed, obviously. We are working with the district on a monthly basis, especially Carlene's team, as far as completing the reports that were requested. So I'm obviously killing a little bit of time so Kim can bring this up. I'll mention that last month we talked about the MD&A. Mr. Richards rightfully mentioned at last month's meeting that the RJSCB is simply not that type of organization that requires an MD&A section in the annual external audit. The RJSCB at least does not file a 10K, but we SAVN assist the RJSCB in the preparation of its annual report as required by the statute to be submitted to the governor of the city of New York, the legislature, the city of Rochester, the Board of Ed, and any other stakeholders. The annual report submission requirements from the state legislature does give the RJSCB an opportunity to explain its business activities and results from the previous fiscal year and its plans for the next fiscal year. So once the new board members have had a chance to see the most recent annual report that the board and SAVN and Alan worked on, we'll have a full understanding of where we were a year ago and where we're going next year, if we return, obviously. So with that said, Kim, I think you're ready to bring up School 54.
Yes, please let me know if you're able to see the screen with the video.
I think we are, yes.
Yes, Kim, I think we do have it.
Okay.
It is a very short video. And just as background for myself, I'm an architect, and the last 25 years has been focused on schools. The last 12 as principal of planning and design in an international firm. We require all the architects on the RSMP projects to do their documents in what's called CAD, computer aided design. That allows us to generate 3D models such as this, although this is a fairly sophisticated one, and it's about 1.5 minutes long, and it will do what we call a bird's eye 3D animation of the Flower City School 54 urban campus proposal, where we have acquired property, and you can see the status of that property in the plan. So if you could start it, Kim. We're looking at the new front door for the school, as well as main parking. We are now looking at the east side of the school along Sherman Street, from which there is a bus drop-off for special ed students. That has been separated and widened. We are now looking down Chase Street, which is proposed to be partially abandoned at this time. There are 2 remaining properties on that block. We've acquired everything else. The deeper green is the play field that we will be developing. And you can see in the 2 gray boxes, the age-appropriate playgrounds that have been developed. Could you pause it for a second, Kim? Pause. There you go. We built in phase 1 a partial busway that extended only to the north side or to the south side of Chase Street. We are now going to be extending it with the properties that we've acquired. This will have the effect of allowing the district to place all of the buses that serve this school currently on site rather than taking up street spaces and creating traffic as well as safety concerns. So we will end up with a capacity for, I believe, 27 or 28 buses overall on site. Okay, Kim, you can continue. And this brings us back around to the front door. The architects take what we call creative license. The trees that are shown are probably about 30-year mature trees compared to the 8 to 10-year-old saplings we have. We can make available in the onboarding process. We do have documents for both School 54 and School 4 that shows the plans and design intents for those respective urban campuses. So with that, wanted to keep it brief out of respect for people's time, but certainly feel free to contact us with any questions. And as I said, the onboarding will bring you up to speed more so with the background and the plans and the intentions. So with that,
PM report on Mr. Chair.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, once again, this is usually much more detailed in regards to all the schools. So we want to make sure we focused on this, and it's really an example of how you can entirely transform a school community with some strategic thinking and collaboration. So really want to thank everybody for their role in this. And I think the number one area for those of you who are familiar with this, with Otis Street, lining up 20 buses onto Otis Street to try to, with the traffic going back and forth, to trying to get kids safely on those buses was always a real challenge. This is one of the real benefits of this. And then creating an entire play area in the back of the building is another great benefit. So I will pause there. First, are there any questions from our board members for Savin, Pepin, and his team?
Mike, one of the things that I put a pitch for here is that, setting aside the specifics of this, which people will get a chance to deal with as time goes on, there's a principle driving this, and that is that as we've worked on these projects over the years, the idea is to provide as broad a space as possible in an urban situation. These schools were built when the city, had housing pressures, and the concept of providing large areas where kids could recreate and where the community could recreate were really not part of the thinking. And one of the things we're trying to do here is get back to that. So when these projects are finished, we not only have a nice building, but we have a nice area that the community can appreciate and can add to the opportunities for the kids who are in those buildings. And we can do that. I mean, it's sometimes hard work, but we can do it because even though the space in Rochester is not always where it needs to be, there is space. And we can build these schools and these programs with this kind of commitment. So as you can tell, I'm a real advocate for this, and I know others on the board and staff are, because it's a real chance for us. And if we don't get it done now, chances of us getting it done later are not very good.
I really agree. And I thank Pepsi, but certainly the Principal Evans and her team and school community was also intricate in terms of integral in terms of putting this together and being able to provide the visions, and then we can match the logistics to the vision. So I want to make sure I publicly recognize them as well. So with no other questions on the board.
Yeah, I believe
President
Elliott has.
President Elliott, you have a question? Or
I have a question. I want to make sure that the superintendent or the deputy superintendent is still on this, because there is some school reconfiguration recommendations, and School 54 happens to be a part of that. So I'd like to have either the deputy superintendent, if she's still on, or the superintendent. Will the changes that are going to be made, the renovations that are going to be made for School 54, because the recommendation is that we move another school into that facility. And so I think that there needs to be some discussion around if what the FMP is doing is going to not align with what the recommendation may be. Now, this still has to come to the Board of Education, but I think that you all need to be aware that that there's some proposals for school reconfiguration, and School 54 is a part of that. So if deputy superintendent is on, or the superintendent, they need to chime in on this.
Thank you so much, President Elliott, and I am still on the board. I'm still on the call. Yes, this particular work through FMP was part of our consideration in the recommendation that we preliminarily put forward in front of the board a few months ago, and it will be part of the conversation that we will have in the work sessions that we will hold with the Board of Education. We do have some proposals that for that school, but they have considered the FMP elements in the proposals that we're proposing to put in front of the Board of Education for consideration.
All right, thank you. So I don't know if you all have any questions to the deputy superintendent at some point, but to her, what she just mentioned, I guess everything will align up, even, and the board still have to approve that. But I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that School 54 is a part of the reconfiguration discussion.
And President Elliott, this is Leslie. We can certainly get some of the documents that we sent to you as a board, as well as just keep them in the loop with the information so they're aware of the direction that we're proposing. That's not an issue either.
All right, thank you.
Oh, that's great. That will be very helpful, Superintendent Smalls. I think, again, I'm not sure whatever school you put there will benefit from this work, because we're really addressing circulation, transportation, safety with this bus extension, and abandoning a portion of Chase Street. So whatever building you technically put there will benefit from this work.
Thank you.
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other thoughts or follow-up questions for Pepin and his team?
I had one on this particular school, and I don't know, maybe I'm not seeing it, but in addition to obviously the buses, which are critical, what about bike racks and places to secure bikes and things like that? Since obviously I think we want to encourage healthy, places, both of play and learning. And oftentimes they're one and the same with the playgrounds on there. So any thoughts on that? Is it just something we can't see, or is that the dark lines just to the right of the buses there?
I'll let Rolly talk about it as the architect, since I'm an engineer, but I believe we've been working with the city engineer on getting input and comments from them. We will definitely consider any concerns and any input you have as we develop this plan. Because it's
Pepin, to respond to Mr. Perrin's question, yes, it has been considered, and if we backed up, we could show you the area that has been designated for bike racks. There is a new main entry, which is primarily for parents, visitors, and first responders. There are dedicated student entries. They tend to be where the buses are shown to the left, near the cafeteria and the gym, and the racks will be located in conjunction with those spaces in the play areas, so that they work also after hours. But that is a consideration that it was incorporated.
Figured as much. Thank you so much.
I have one last commercial, which isn't mine, but for the new board members, I think it would also be helpful for you to realize that although the program goals for diversity, that being minority women, small and disadvantaged businesses is 33%. Currently, the program is running at about 36%, just as a metric indicator for you.
Okay, thank you, Pepin, Rolly, for your work and also for your feedback. I think, Rich, one other thing to point out, one real value of Norm's, not only as a board member, but also as a partner, was being able for us to collaborate our offices from district ops and city ops to make sure we can, wherever possible in terms of sidewalk work and street work and so forth, and kind of coordinating it with projects. And that's been a really, that was really a change from phase 1 and phase 2, where that collaboration was much greater in phase 2. So it's very, very good to have you as a representative here and continue that work that really Norm really was at the forefront and getting started, and really holding us all accountable to keep coming back to that and making sure we have all those plans in mind when we put together these projects. So I'm glad you're thinking like that ahead, and it's probably going to be an opportunity for more collaboration going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, with that, I think that closes out our agenda for this evening. I now need to take our new board into executive session, and Ed, Greg, and Melissa, please hold me accountable, make sure I use the language correctly. Pursuant to New York Public Officers Law, Article 7, Section 105.1 F, to discuss particular corporations and their respective contracts, and pursuant to the New York Public Officers Law, Article 7, Section 108.3, to consult with the board's general counsel on matters subject to the attorney-client privilege.
And that's correct. And specifically, this is to discuss current litigation involving Hewitt Young Electric.
And I need a motion to go into executive session. Is that correct?
Yes.
Who do you want there, Mike, before we go in?
Okay, so I would need Pepin, your team, so you and Rolly, and anybody else who's kind of tied to this project, certainly our board members and our general counsel. I believe that's what I need this evening.
And Alan.
And Alan, excuse me. I kind of goes without saying, but yes, and Alan as well.
Happy New Year, everybody. See you next month.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you, President.
Thank you. Have a good
President
night.
Elliott, thank you.
Have a good night.
So Kim, do we go into a breakout room, or is that how we do
Yes,
this?
I'm in the process of setting up the breakout room right now.
Okay.
Individuals have to join.
That's correct. I'm gonna stop that.